Living alone for the first time in that quiet Texas house was supposed to be my fresh start. At 27, I'd finally saved enough to rent a place all to myself. A cozy one-bedroom just outside Austin. The neighborhood was quiet, mostly older couples and young families. At night, the only sounds were crickets and the occasional hum of a distant highway. I loved the independence, but the silence took getting used to. Every creak of the floorboards or groan of the pipes made me jump. Still, I told myself it was safe. Until that Saturday night. I was sprawled on the couch, leftover pizza cold on the coffee table, binge-watching a crime documentary. The glow of the TV was the only light in the room. Outside, the driveway was empty. No cars, no movement, just the faint rustle of oak trees in the wind. Then a knock, sharp, insistent. My heart lurched. I hadn't heard a car pull up, hadn't seen headlights. I paused the show, straining to listen. Another knock, louder this time. Through the peephole, I saw a woman in her 30s. Dark ponytail, hoodie, jeans. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Hi, sorry to bother you," she said, her voice too bright. "I'm your neighbor. My phone died. Can I borrow yours? It's an emergency." I hesitated. I'd lived here a year and knew every neighbor by face. Never seen her. "Which house are you from?" I asked. The door still chained. "2 doors down." "Just moved in," she said, nodding vaguely toward the street. Her hand stayed buried in her hoodie pocket. Everything in me screamed no. But what if she really needed help? I unlatched the chain, opening the door just enough to hand her my phone. She stepped inside like she'd been waiting for the invitation. The air felt heavier with her there. She didn't glance at the photos on the wall or the Netflix menu frozen on the screen. Just stood rigid, eyes flicking to the front door. "It's right there," I said, pointing to my phone on the table. She walked slowly, as if counting her steps. My pulse quickened. When she reached the coffee table, she didn't pick up the phone. Instead, she turned, her smile gone. The knife flashed in her hand, a switchblade, sharp and silver. "Sit down," she said, voice flat. I backed toward the kitchen, hands up. "Take my wallet, it's in the drawer." She didn't blink, just opened the front door and waved. Heavy footsteps pounded up the porch. The second knock wasn't a knock, it was a crash. A man burst through the door, shoulders hunched, eyes wild. He looked at the woman, then at me and grinned. My legs moved before my brain caught up. I lunged for the back door, bare feet slapping the cold tiles. Behind me, the woman shouted, "Get him." I didn't look back. The backyard was pitch black, the fence a shadowy outline. My hands clawed at the wooden planks, splinters digging into my palms as I hauled myself over. I landed hard on the other side, gravel biting into my feet. Voices echoed behind me. "Close." I ran, lungs burning, toward the only house with lights on. Banging on the door, I screamed, "Help, please." An older man answered, his wife gasping behind him. They yanked me inside, locked the door, and called 911. I slumped against their couch, shaking so hard I couldn't speak. The man handed me a blanket while his wife muttered, "Lord, child, you're safe now." Police arrived minutes later. 2 officers stayed with me while others searched my house. "Empty," one said, radio crackling. But we found tire marks down the street. The woman and the man were gone. My phone, wallet, everything was still there. "They weren't after your stuff," the officer said grimly. "They wanted you." Turns out, a gang had been targeting solo renters. One distracts you at the door, the others swarm in. "You're lucky you ran," the cop said. "These creeps, they don't leave witnesses." I slept on the couple's couch that night. Every creak of the house jolted me awake. By morning, I packed my bags. The landlord shrugged when I broke the lease. Happens a lot these days. But fear followed me. For weeks, I jumped at knocks, triple-checked locks, and slept with a kitchen knife under my pillow. Friends said I was paranoid. They didn't understand. I'd seen her face. The way she'd stared at me, cold and calculating, like I was just prey. Then, one night, a noise. Not a knock, a scratch at the window. I froze. The curtain fluttered. A shadow moved outside. My throat tightened. Were they back? I grabbed the knife from under my pillow and crept to the window, my breath fogging the glass. Outside, the streetlight flickered, casting jagged shadows across the yard. Nothing moved, just the wind, I told myself. But then I saw it, a figure crouched behind my trash cans, hood pulled low. My hands shook as I dialed 911. "They're back," I whispered. "Please hurry." The dispatcher stayed on the line, her voice steady. "Stay hidden. Don't confront them." But hiding wasn't an option anymore. I'd spent weeks jumping at shadows and I was done feeling like prey. I flicked on every light in the house, flooding the yard with glare. The figure froze, then bolted toward the fence. Not this time. I sprinted out the back door, barefoot and reckless, chasing them into the alley. "I see you," I screamed, my voice raw. They stumbled, tripping over a garbage bag. For a split second, I saw their face. Young, maybe 19, eyes wide with panic. Then they vanished into the dark. Police found cigarette butts and a crowbar by my fence. Same crew, an officer said. "They've been hitting rentals all month." They arrested 2 suspects the next day, but the woman with the knife was never caught. But fear followed me. For weeks I jumped at knocks, triple-checked locks, and slept with a kitchen knife under my pillow. Friends said I was paranoid. They didn't understand I'd seen her face, the way she'd stared at me, cold and calculating, like I was just prey. Then one night, a noise, not a knock, a scratch at the window. I froze. The curtain fluttered. A shadow moved outside. My throat tightened. Were they back? I grabbed the knife from under my pillow and crept to the window, my breath fogging the glass. Outside, the streetlight flickered, casting jagged shadows across the yard. Nothing moved, just the wind, I told myself. But then I saw it. A figure crouched behind my trash cans, hood pulled low. My hands shook as I dialed 911. "They're back," I whispered. "Please hurry." The dispatcher stayed on the line, her voice steady. "Stay hidden. Don't confront them." But hiding wasn't an option anymore. I'd spent weeks jumping at shadows, and I was done feeling like prey. I flicked on every light in the house, flooding the yard with glare. The figure froze, then bolted toward the fence. Not this time. I sprinted out the back door, barefoot and reckless, chasing them into the alley. "I see you," I screamed, my voice raw. They stumbled, tripping over a garbage bag. For a split second I saw their face. Young, maybe 19, eyes wide with panic. Then they vanished into the dark. Police found cigarette butts and a crowbar by my fence. "Same crew," an officer said. "They've been hitting rentals all month." They arrested 2 suspects the next day, but the woman with the knife was never caught. I moved out that weekend. The new apartment had security gates, cameras, and a nosy neighbor who loved to gossip about suspicious folks. I still slept with the knife nearby. Some nights I'd jolt awake, convinced I heard knocking, but slowly the fear dulled. Then, 6 months later, a letter arrived. No return address. Inside was a photo of my old Texas house, taken at night. On the back, scrawled in red ink, "You run fast, but we don't forget." I burned the photo, didn't tell the cops. What good would it do? I knew then I'd never truly escape. Not the memories, not the what-ifs. That woman's cold stare haunted my dreams. A reminder that danger doesn't knock twice. It waits. Now I double-check locks, avoid ground-floor apartments, and trust my gut like it's gospel. Living alone taught me freedom, but it also taught me this: safety's an illusion. All that's real is how far you'll run when the illusion shatters. Living alone in my little Texas house was supposed to be my fresh start. After a messy breakup, I rented a small 1-bedroom in Plano, nothing fancy but cozy and quiet. The neighborhood was a mix of retirees and young families, the kind of place where everyone waved but kept to themselves. At night, the silence felt heavy, but I told myself I'd get used to it. That's what independence was about, right? For the first 2 months it was peaceful. I'd come home from work, jog around the block and unwind with a book or bad reality TV. Then one Tuesday night everything changed. I was lying in bed scrolling through my phone when I heard it. Slow, heavy footsteps crunching the dry leaves outside my bedroom window. My heart froze. The sound was deliberate, too loud for an animal, too slow for the wind. I sat up, straining to listen. The footsteps stopped right beneath the window. I stared at the blinds, half expecting them to snap open. Nothing happened. After a minute, the footsteps faded. I told myself it was just a raccoon or a drunk neighbor cutting through the yard. The next morning I checked outside. Flattened grass, bent bushes, but nothing conclusive. I shrugged it off. But the footsteps returned the next night, and the next, always around 2 a.m., pacing back and forth beneath my window. I'd lie there paralyzed, clutching my phone like a lifeline. By the third night, I started double-checking every lock, closing every curtain. Sleep became a battle. Then came the shadow. One night, as I lay awake listening to the footsteps circle the house, I saw a flicker of movement through the blinds. A dark shape lingered outside, motionless. I grabbed the kitchen knife. I'd started keeping under my pillow, my hands shaking so hard I nearly dropped it. The shadow didn't move, didn't breathe, just watched. I called the police, but by the time they arrived, the figure was gone. Probably a prank, the officer said, shining a flashlight over the trampled grass. Kids these days. But the fear stayed. I stopped opening windows, stopped jogging after dark. The house I'd once loved felt like a cage. Then one night the scratching started. Not outside, inside. A soft, persistent sound coming from the spare bedroom closet. I hadn't used that room in months. The air smelled stale when I opened the door, dust swirling in my flashlight beam. The scratching stopped. I told myself it was mice, but when I pulled open the closet door, I found a torn scrap of dark fabric snagged on a nail. It wasn't mine. The fabric changed everything. It was dark, frayed at the edges and smelled like sweat and dirt. Not mine. I tore the house apart, checking closets, under beds, even the attic. Nothing else was missing, but that scrap of cloth gnawed at me. Someone had been inside. The footsteps got louder, no longer just outside. Now they circled the house, slow and deliberate, like a predator testing its prey. I bought security cameras, mounting one on the porch and another in the backyard. They caught nothing but shadows and wind. One night, after a week of silence, I heard the spare bedroom window rattle. Not the wind. This was sharper, like fingers tapping glass. I grabbed my phone and the knife, creeping down the hallway. The door to the spare room was slightly open. I'd shut it earlier. Cold air hit me as I pushed the door wider. The window was cracked open, moonlight spilling onto the floor. My stomach dropped. I'd locked it. I rushed to close it, hands trembling. When I saw the handprint muddy smeared on the glass, I called the cops again. They found footprints under the window and a cigarette butt near the fence. Same brand as last time, the officer muttered. They dusted for prints but found nothing. Be careful, he said, like I hadn't already been living in a prison of my own fear. I started sleeping in the living room, the knife and phone beside me. The scratching in the walls got worse. At 3 a.m. it sounded like nails dragging through plaster. I'd blast music to drown it out, but the silence afterward felt heavier. Then the whispers, faint at first like static. I'd hear them when the house was quiet, hushed, garbled words coming from the vents. I stuffed towels into them, but the whispers slithered through anyway. You're not alone. One night I snapped. I stormed to the spare room, crowbar in hand, and tore open the closet. Empty. I ripped down boxes, kicked the walls until I found it. A hole the size of a fist punched through the drywall near the floor. Inside, wedged between the studs, was a crumpled fast food wrapper and a lighter. Someone had been living in my walls. I collapsed to the floor, gasping. The scratching wasn't mice. It was them. They'd been listening, watching, waiting. I called the police, screaming into the phone, but by the time they arrived, the hole was empty. No wrapper, no lighter, just my word against the silence. The officer eyed me like I was crazy. "Ma'am, maybe you should talk to someone." That night, I dragged my mattress into the kitchen, the only room without vents or closets. I barricaded the door with chairs and stared at the ceiling, counting every creak. Around 2 a.m., the whispers came again. Closer, clearer, "Let me in." The whispers turned to laughter, hollow, mocking, as I pressed my back against the kitchen wall. "Let me in." It wasn't coming from the vents anymore. It was inside the room. My breath hitched. The barricaded door trembled as something heavy slammed against it. Wood splintered. Chairs screeched across the floor. I grabbed the crowbar and lunged for the back door, but it was jammed. The laughter grew louder, echoing through the house. "You're mine now." A figure emerged from the hallway, tall, hunched, face hidden under a hood. He dragged a rusted pipe across the wall, sparks flying. "Get out!" I screamed, swinging the crowbar wildly. He dodged, calm, like this was a game. His gloved hand shot out, grabbing my wrist. The crowbar clattered to the floor. I kicked, twisted, bit his arm until he let go. Blood filled my mouth. His blood. He staggered back, snarling. I bolted to the spare room, slammed the door, and shoved the dresser against it. His fists pounded the wood. Thud, thud, thud. The hole in the wall gaped at me. Inside I saw a nest, blankets, empty cans, a pile of my missing socks. My stomach churned. How long had he been here? The pounding stopped. Silence, then scratching, from inside the walls. He was crawling toward me. I yanked open the window, cold air biting my face, and climbed onto the roof. The ground swam below me. 2 stories. No choice. I jumped. Pain exploded in my ankle as I hit the dirt. Limping, I stumbled to my neighbor's house, screaming. Their lights flicked on. The man inside, Mr. Rivera, a retired vet, answered with a shotgun. Police found the intruder hiding in my attic, curled in that filthy nest. Turns out he'd been squatting there for weeks, slipping through a gap in the roof. A drifter with a record of breaking into easy targets, single women, quiet neighborhoods. I moved out the next day. The landlord offered a refund. No questions asked, but the fear stuck. I rented a high-rise downtown, where the walls were concrete and the doors had triple locks. A month later, I got a package. No return address. Inside was a Polaroid of my old house taken at night. On the back, scrawled in red, "Miss you. I didn't call the cops." What's the point? Some monsters don't stay caged. Now I check every closet, every shadow. I hear his laughter in crowded rooms. And at night, when the city noise fades, I still taste his blood in my mouth, sour, metallic, alive. I've always loved the quiet. 5 years ago, I traded city chaos for a secluded cabin in rural upstate New York. Miles of woods stretched behind my property, and the nearest neighbor was a speck on the horizon. My days were spent fishing on the lake or sipping beer on the deck, watching the sun dip below the trees. Peaceful, perfect, until the woods started talking back. It began 2 weeks ago. I was on the deck one night, listening to crickets, when a twig snapped in the darkness. No big deal. Deer, raccoons, maybe a fox. But the next night, it happened again. Closer, louder, a slow, deliberate crunch of leaves, like someone testing their weight on the ground. I shrugged it off. Just animals, I told myself. Then came the scratching. It started at the side of the house, near the spare bedroom window. A faint, persistent sound like fingernails dragging over wood. I grabbed a flashlight and circled the cabin, but found nothing. No tracks, no broken branches, just silence. The tapping came next. 3 nights later, I was in bed when a soft tap 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 echoed from the spare room. I froze. The sound was rhythmic, almost polite. I forced myself to check, flashlight shaking in my hand. The room was empty, moonlight pooling on the dusty floor, but the air felt thick, charged. I locked the window and shoved a chair under the doorknob. Sleep didn't come easy after that. Every rustle of leaves or creak of the cabin's old bones jolted me awake. I started carrying a crowbar from the shed, just in case. Then I found the cloth. While searching the spare room, I spotted a torn scrap of fabric snagged on a nail inside the closet. Dark, ragged, reeking of sweat and dirt. It wasn't mine. My stomach twisted. Someone's been here. I tore the room apart, finding nothing else. No footprints, no broken locks, but the fear stuck. The shadow sealed it. One night I saw it through the window. A tall, hunched figure lingering at the tree line. Motionless, watching. I flicked the porch light on and it vanished. No footprints, no trace. Just that lingering sense of eyes on my back. I called the cops. They found nothing. Probably a hiker, the deputy said, shrugging. Or your mind playing tricks. But I knew better. The woods weren't empty anymore. The shadow didn't stay at the tree line for long. 2 nights later, I woke to the sound of footsteps circling the cabin. Slow, heavy, deliberate. I grabbed the crowbar and crept to the window, peeling back the curtain. Moonlight washed over the yard, illuminating the figure, tall, shoulders hunched, face hidden under a hood. It stood just feet from my porch, head tilted toward my bedroom. I flicked the porch light on. The figure didn't run. It laughed, a low, raspy sound that crawled through the glass. My hands turned icy. I dialed 911, my voice cracking as I described the intruder. Stay inside, the dispatcher said. Deputies are en route. By the time they arrived, the figure was gone. The deputies swept the woods with flashlights, finding nothing but trampled underbrush. Probably a drifter, one said, kicking at the dirt. They'll move on. But the next morning I found proof they hadn't. On my porch lay a dead rabbit, its throat slit, arranged neatly on the welcome mat. Flies buzzed around its glazed eyes. A message, a warning. I vomited into the bushes, then hosed the blood off the wood, scrubbing until my hands burned. That night I boarded up the spare room window and set up motion-activated cameras around the cabin. The woods stayed quiet for 3 days. Too quiet, no scratching, no tapping, just the suffocating weight of being watched. On the 4th night, the cameras caught movement. I watched the footage at dawn, a shadow slipping past the lens too fast to make out details. Then at 2:37 a.m., a hand, pale, dirt-caked, reaching into frame to adjust the camera's angle. The feed cut to static. I packed a bag, ready to flee to a motel, when I noticed my fishing knife was missing from the kitchen drawer. My breath quickened. They'd been inside. I tore through the cabin, checking every corner. My spare keys were gone. So was a photo of me from the mantel. I called the cops again. The deputy sighed. "We'll patrol the area, ma'am." His tone said hysterical city woman. That night I didn't sleep. I sat on the couch, crowbar across my lap, staring at the front door. Around 3 a.m., the scratching started again. This time on the roof. Drag. Pause. Like someone crawling toward the chimney. I threw open the door and screamed into the darkness. "Show yourself." Silence. "Yee." Then a rock sailed out of the trees, smashing the porch light. Glass rained down as I stumbled back inside. The cabin went pitch black. From the spare room came a thud, then another. The boarded-up window splintered as something heavy slammed against it. I ran, but the back door wouldn't budge. Jammed shut. The crowbar trembled in my hands as footsteps creaked down the hallway. "I see you in there," a voice hissed, guttural and wet, right outside the living room door. The living room door creaked open. A silhouette filled the doorway, tall, reeking of wet earth and rot. Moonlight glinted off the fishing knife he stole from my drawer. I swung the crowbar blindly, hitting air. He lunged, tackling me to the floor. The knife grazed my arm, hot pain searing through me. I kicked, screamed, clawed at his hood until it slipped off. His face was a nightmare. Sunken eyes, skin peeling like old bark, teeth filed to jagged points. He grinned, pinning my wrists with one hand. "You're mine now," he rasped, breath sour. I headbutted him, feeling his nose crunch. He reeled back, howling. I scrambled to the fireplace, grabbed a log, and hurled it at his head. It missed, smashing the boarded window instead. Cold air rushed in. "Cops here." I lied, voice raw. He froze, snarling. Sirens wailed in the distance, real this time. He bolted through the broken window, vanishing into the woods. Deputies found me bleeding on the floor, the cabin trashed. They tracked his footprints to the lake, where they vanished at the water's edge. "Gone," one said, shaking his head, like he never existed. I spent the night at the station, stitches in my arm, replaying his rotten smile. The deputies called him a local legend, a hermit who'd haunted those woods for decades, slipping in and out of cabins like smoke. No name, no history, just stories. I sold the cabin for pennies and moved back to the city. My new apartment has steel doors, cameras, and neighbors so close I hear their TVs. But the woods followed me. A week later, a package arrived. No return address. Inside was the photo he stole from my mantel, me smiling on the cabin deck. On the back, scrawled in mud, "Miss our talks." I burned it. Didn't tell the cops. What's left to say? Now I keep the crowbar by my bed. I don't open windows. Don't hike. Don't fish. At night, when sirens fade and the city holds its breath, I hear it, tap, tap, tap on the balcony glass. I never look. But last week I found a dead sparrow on my doorstep, its wings torn off, arranged neatly. The quiet isn't peaceful anymore. It's waiting. When I was 22, I moved into the basement apartment of my parents' house to save money. It was supposed to be temporary, just until I found a real job, but it turned into a year of half privacy. The place was cramped, a mini fridge, a fold-out couch, and a bathroom that smelled like mildew. The only perk, a side entrance so I could sneak friends in without my parents noticing. One Friday night, my buddies Anthony and Jay came over. My parents were out of town, so we cranked the music, ordered pizza, and drank cheap beer until the hockey game ended. By midnight, we were slumped on the couch, laughing at dumb memes. Jay passed out first, snoring like a chainsaw. Anthony left around 1 a.m., slurring about work the next day. I stumbled to my bedroom, locked the door out of habit, and crashed. Around 3 a.m., a sound jolted me awake, footsteps. Heavy, slow, creaking across the floor above me, my parents' kitchen. "Anthony," I mumbled, half asleep. Maybe he'd come back for his phone. But the steps didn't match his quick shuffle. These were deliberate. Thud. Pause. Thud. I sat up, heart pounding. The bedroom doorknob rattled. Not a twist, a jiggle like someone testing it. "Jay," I whispered. No answer. The rattling stopped. I told myself it was a dream and forced my eyes shut. The next morning, Jay was still snoring on the couch. "Did you try to get into my room last night?" I asked, tossing him a water bottle. He squinted. "Nah, man, I was dead." I shrugged it off. We grabbed breakfast at the deli, and I spent the day out with other friends. But that night, alone again, I heard the footsteps. Louder, closer, right above my bedroom ceiling. I texted my parents. "You guys home early?" "No, back Monday." "Why?" The air turned thick. Eamon checked every lock, every window. Around 2 a.m. the doorknob rattled again, harder. Then a knock, soft, 3 taps. "Who's there?" My voice cracked. Silence. I texted Anthony and Jay. "You here?" No replies. My parents didn't pick up. I grabbed a dumbbell from under the bed and hid in the corner, sweat soaking my shirt. The knocking turned to pounding. "Open up," a raspy voice growled. I dialed 911, whispering, "Someone's trying to break in." The operator stayed on the line as I crawled to the window, my hands shaking too hard to open it. Police sirens wailed in the distance. The pounding stopped. By the time officers arrived, the house was silent. They found nothing. No broken locks, no footprints. "Probably a drunk," one said. But as they left, I noticed something: muddy smudges on the basement door. Someone had been inside. The muddy smudges changed everything. I scrubbed them off the basement door, but the fear stuck. For days I triple-checked locks, slept with the dumbbell under my pillow and jumped at every creak. My parents brushed it off. Probably raccoons, Mom said. But raccoons don't leave handprints. Then the noises got bolder. 3 nights later I woke to the sound of footsteps inside the basement, slow, heavy, pacing near the mini-fridge. I lay frozen, sweat soaking the sheets. The doorknob rattled, jiggle, 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 then stopped. A shadow slid under the door, blocking the hallway light. I texted Jay, "Are you here? Dude, it's 3 a.m. No." The shadow lingered. I held my breath until it drifted away. The next morning I found the side entrance unlocked. I'd bolted it last night. I bought a security camera, mounting it above the basement stairs. That night I stayed at Jay's apartment, watching the feed on my phone. Nothing, just static after midnight. When I returned, the camera was angled at the ceiling. What the hell? I called the cops again. This time they found a cigarette butt under the deck. Marlboro Reds. Same brand we've seen at other break-ins, an officer said. "Be careful, careful." I started sleeping in my car. But the intruder didn't want the house. They wanted me. One night as I crept inside to grab clothes, I heard laughter. Soft, guttural, coming from the upstairs bathroom. I bolted, screeching out of the driveway, and didn't return for 2 days. When I finally went back, the side entrance was wide open. Inside, the basement reeked of stale smoke. My laptop was gone. So was the framed photo of my ex from the shelf. I called the cops, hysterical. They found footprints in the backyard leading to a hole in the fence. "He's been watching you," the officer said. "Knows your routine." That night, I stayed at Anthony's. His girlfriend made tea while I rambled about the stalker. "Check the attic," she said. "Creeps hide stuff there." The next morning, I climbed the attic stairs, flashlight shaking, dusty boxes, old Christmas decorations in a nest, a sleeping bag, empty beer cans, a pile of my missing socks, and the photo of my ex, slashed with a knife. I stared at the slashed photo, my ex's face shredded into paper ribbons. The attic air felt thick, suffocating. Behind me, the floor creaked. I wasn't alone. I spun around, flashlight beam trembling. A man stood in the attic doorway, tall, greasy hair, eyes glinting in the dark. He held my missing laptop under one arm. "Miss me?" he sneered, stepping closer. I stumbled back, knocking over a box of ornaments. Glass shattered. "Get out!" I screamed, scrambling for the stairs. He lunged, grabbing my ankle. I kicked, my heel connecting with his jaw. He hissed, grip loosening. I tumbled down the attic steps, landing hard on the hallway floor. Pain shot through my ribs as I crawled toward the basement, his footsteps thundering behind me. "You're mine," he roared. I slammed the basement door, jamming a chair under the knob. He pounded on it, laughing, a wet, broken sound. I fumbled with my phone, dialing 911, but the call dropped. No service. The door splintered. He wedged the knife through the crack, sawing at the wood. I grabbed the dumbbell from my room and swung blindly as he burst through. The metal connected with his shoulder. He dropped the knife, howling, but tackled me to the ground. His hands closed around my throat, breath reeking of cigarettes and rot. "Should have locked your door," he spat. I clawed at his face, fingernails scraping his eyes. He recoiled, and I kneed him in the gut. The knife glinted nearby. I grabbed it, slashing upward. The blade caught his cheek, blood spraying. He staggered back, clutching his face. Sirens wailed outside. Red and blue lights flashed through the basement windows. The man snarled, "This isn't over," before bolting out the side entrance. Police found him 2 blocks away, hiding in a dumpster. Turns out, he'd been squatting in the attic for weeks, a homeless addict with a record of stalking. My parents pressed charges, but he vanished after posting bail. I moved out the next day. My new apartment has steel doors, a security system, and no attic, but the fear followed. A month later, a package arrived. No return address. Inside was my laptop, sticky with fingerprints. The background photo was changed to a selfie of him grinning in my old bedroom. On the screen, a single Word document: "You still don't lock your doors." I smashed the laptop with a hammer. Didn't tell the cops. Now I check closets, under beds, behind shower curtains. I hear his laugh in crowded rooms. And sometimes when I'm half asleep, I swear I feel his breath on my neck. Sour, hot, alive. Safety's a joke. All that's real is the knife under my pillow and the scars on my throat. I was 15 when I learned fear isn't just a feeling, it's a taste. Metallic, like pennies coating your tongue. My parents were out at the casino that night, leaving me home alone with Abby, our black lab. She was all wagging tail and slobbery kisses, never barked at anything louder than a squirrel. But that night she stood rigid in the living room, growling at the dark windows. I'd been glued to my laptop, chatting with friends and watching YouTube videos, when Abby's barks cut through the music. "Abs, chill," I said, pausing my video. She ignored me, hackles raised, staring at the front door. I figured Mom and Dad were back early, but no headlights lit the driveway. No keys jingled in the lock, just Abby's low, rumbling growls. I peeked through the blinds. Our driveway was empty, the street quiet except for a passing car. "Probably nothing," I told her, scratching her ears. She whined, pacing between me and the door. Then the knocking started. Not at the front door, at the side entrance, the one leading to the basement. A sharp, hurried rapping, like someone testing the lock. Abby lunged, barking furiously. My stomach dropped. The basement door was hidden under the deck, surrounded by overgrown bushes. Nobody accidentally found it. I grabbed the landline, fingers shaking as I dialed 911. "Someone's trying to break in," I whispered, crouching behind the couch. Abby planted herself in front of me, teeth bared. The knocking turned to scraping, metal on metal. A screwdriver, a crowbar. "Stay on the line," the operator said. But I couldn't breathe. The basement door creaked open. Heavy footsteps thudded up the stairs. Abby erupted into a frenzy, charging down the hallway, her barks echoing off the walls. A man's voice shouted, "Goddamn dog," followed by a crash. Then silence. Abby trotted back, tail wagging like she'd just played fetch. The house felt still, too still. I stayed frozen until headlights swept the driveway. My parents' car. I sprinted outside, sobbing as they stepped out. "What's wrong?" Mom asked, clutching her purse like a shield. I told them everything. Dad stormed inside, gun in hand, but found nothing. Just a overturned vase and muddy footprints leading back to the basement. "Probably a drunk," he said, but his hands shook. The next afternoon, a knock made me jump. Uncle Pete stood at the door, grinning like a used car salesman. "Tried dropping by last night," he said, handing Dad an envelope. No one answered. Dad's face turned red. "You were here last night?" Dad slammed the door in Uncle Pete's face, his knuckles white on the doorknob. "Stay away from my family," he growled through the wood. Uncle Pete's laughter slithered under the door, a wet, mocking sound before his footsteps faded down the porch. Mom pulled me into a hug, but I couldn't stop shaking. He'd been in our house. The next day I found a gift card on the kitchen counter. The envelope read, "Thanks for helping Kate with softball," and Uncle Pete's jagged handwriting. Mom tossed it in the trash. "He's just awkward," she said, avoiding my eyes. But awkward didn't explain the things that kept happening. 2 nights later I woke to Abby's growls. She stood at my bedroom window, teeth bared at the darkness. I peered outside and saw a shadow leaning against our fence, a man in a baseball cap, smoke curling from his cigarette. Uncle Pete. He stared up at my window, grinning when our eyes met. I yanked the blinds shut, heart pounding. He started showing up everywhere. At my softball games, lurking behind the bleachers, outside the school parking lot, engine idling. Once I found a half-smoked Marlboro Red, his brand, crushed into the dirt by our basement door. Dad called the cops, but Uncle Pete vanished every time they came. "He's harmless," An officer shrugged. Just lonely. Harmless. Then the photos started. I found the first one taped to my locker, a blurry shot of me pitching at last week's game. On the back, scribbled in red ink, "You've got a strong arm." I tore it up, but another appeared the next day. Me walking home from school, Abby trotting beside me. Mom finally believed me when she checked the basement. Hidden behind the water heater was a nest, empty beer cans, a sleeping bag, and a stack of my missing hair ties. "He's been living down here," she whispered, clutching Dad's arm. They changed the locks, installed cameras, and threatened Uncle Pete with a restraining order. He laughed it off. "Family doesn't need paperwork," he sneered at Dad over the phone. One afternoon, I came home to find the basement door ajar. Abby bolted inside, barking wildly. I followed, bat in hand, and found Uncle Pete sitting on the stairs, flipping through my old yearbook. "Get out," I screamed, swinging the bat. He stood slowly, eyes glinting. "Relax, kiddo. Just wanted to chat." His breath reeked of whiskey. "You're exactly like your cousin Kate, always so helpful." Abby lunged, snapping at his leg. He kicked her aside, and she yelped. Rage burned through me. I swung the bat, cracking his ribs. He staggered, cursing, and fled out the basement door. Dad found me crying on the floor, clutching Abby. That night, he loaded his shotgun and sat by the window, staring into the dark. "He comes back," Dad said, voice trembling. "I'll end him." But Uncle Pete didn't come back. He sent something worse instead. 2 days after the basement fight, the nightmares started. I'd wake up drenched in sweat. Certain Uncle Pete was standing over my bed, reeking of whiskey and cigarettes. Abby slept glued to my side, ears twitching at every sound. Then on a rainy Tuesday, the power went out. Dad was working late. Mom and I huddled in the living room, flashlights in hand. When the side door creaked open, Abby shot up, snarling, as heavy boots clomped down the basement stairs. He was back. Mom dialed 911, her voice frantic. I grabbed Dad's baseball bat, hands slick with sweat. "Stay here," I hissed, but she followed me to the basement door. The stairs groaned under Uncle Pete's weight. He stood at the bottom, grinning, a crowbar dangling from his hand. "Miss me," he slurred, swaying. Came to finish our chat. Abby lunged down the stairs, teeth sinking into his leg. He roared, swinging the crowbar. It clipped her side, and she yelped, collapsing. Rage burned through me. I charged, swinging the bat. It cracked his knee. He crumpled, cursing, and I swung again, this time at his ribs. "Stop!" Mom screamed, pulling me back. Uncle Pete crawled toward the basement exit, dragging his leg. Sirens wailed outside. Red and blue lights flooded the driveway. Police found him half conscious in the bushes, clutching a crumpled photo of me. He'd broken 3 ribs, they said. Self-defense, the officers nodded, but their eyes lingered on the crowbar, the blood on my bat.
Uncle Pete survived.
Got 6 months for trespassing and harassment. Mom and Dad sold the house a week later. Fresh start, Dad said, but his voice was hollow. We moved across the state. New school, new house, new locks. Abby healed, but she flinched at loud noises. So did I. A year later, a package arrived on my 16th birthday. No return address. Inside was a dusty softball glove, the one I'd used to coach cousin Kate. Scrawled inside, in shaky red letters, "You'll always be my favorite." I burned it in the backyard, watched the leather curl and blacken. Dad called the cops, but the trail went cold. He's still in jail, they said. But last week, at a gas station halfway to nowhere, I saw him. Or thought I did. A man in a baseball cap, leaning against a pickup, smoke spiraling from his cigarette. Our eyes met. He grinned, tipped his hat, and vanished into the crowd. Abby's dead now. Old age, the vet said. But some nights when the house creaks, I still grab Dad's bat, still taste pennies on my tongue. Uncle Pete taught me fear isn't something you outrun. It's in the smoke, the shadows, the knock at the door when you're alone. It's the price of being seen. Living alone as a 29-year-old software engineer in Austin sounded like a dream until it turned into a nightmare. My two-bedroom house was modest but cozy, nestled in a quiet neighborhood where the biggest excitement was the occasional raccoon raid. I'd grown used to the solitude, working late into the night coding, the glow of my laptop my only companion. But the silence took on a new edge after my roommate moved out. It was a Thursday night, the kind where the city's hum feels like a lullaby. I was slumped on the couch, half watching a documentary, when a knock shattered the calm. Midnight. No one knocks at midnight. My pulse spiked. Through the peephole I saw a man in his late 30s, scruffy beard, hoodie, hands shoved in his pockets. He stared at the ground, shoulders hunched like he carried the weight of the world. "Hey," he said, forcing a smile when I called out. "My car broke down a few blocks back. Can I use your phone? Just one call." His voice was polite, but his eyes darted past me into the house. The gas station was a 10-minute walk. "Why me?" "Sorry," I said, firmer now. "Can't help you." He leaned closer, breath fogging the glass. "Please, I'm not feeling well. It's urgent." Desperation clawed at his words. My gut screamed no, but before I could react, the doorknob rattled, subtle at first, then violent. He was trying to break in. The doorknob rattled harder, the lock groaning under the pressure. I stumbled back, adrenaline surging, and bolted to the kitchen. My hands fumbled through the drawer, forks, spoons, "Where's the knife?" as the door splintered behind me. He burst in, reeking of sweat and gasoline, eyes wild. "Should have just opened up," he snarled. I grabbed the largest chef's knife and held it out, trembling. "Get out," I called the cops. A lie, but he hesitated. His gaze flicked to my laptop on the coffee table, then back to the knife. "Relax, sweetheart," he said, raising his hands mockingly. "Just need your phone, lost mine." He took a step closer. "Stay back." I slashed the air, nicking his forearm. He hissed, staring at the blood. For a second, fear flashed in his eyes, then rage. He lunged. I ducked, scrambling down the hallway. He crashed into the wall, cursing. My bedroom door was locked, always locked, and I fumbled with the key. His footsteps thundered closer. The key clicked. I slammed the door, locking it as his weight smashed against the wood. "Open it," he roared, pounding. I crawled to the window, hands shaking too hard to lift it. The street was dark, silent, no neighbors, no cars. My phone was still on the couch, trapped. The pounding stopped, a creak, then scratching, metal on metal. He was picking the lock. I grabbed a lamp, yanked the cord from the wall, and swung it like a bat. The door cracked open. He grinned, holding a screwdriver. "Cute," he said, stepping inside. I swung the lamp. It shattered against his shoulder. He grabbed my wrist, twisting until I dropped it. His other hand closed around my throat, squeezing. "Should have been nice," he spat. Black spots danced in my vision. I clawed at his face, kneed his gut, but he didn't budge. Then barking, a deep, furious roar echoed outside. "Hey," a voice shouted. Mr. Clark, my 70-year-old neighbor, stood on his porch waving a flashlight. "Get off her." The man froze, grip loosening. I gasped, biting his hand. He yelped, releasing me, and bolted out the window. Mr. Clark called 911 while I collapsed, gulping air. Police found tire marks down the street, but no trace of the man. "He'll lie low," an officer said. "But change your locks." I did. Added cameras too. But nights now felt endless. Every car engine, every footstep, sent me scrambling for the knife. Then a week later, my laptop pinged. An email from an unknown address. "You fight dirty." I liked that. Attached was a photo of me sleeping, taken through my bedroom window. The photo froze me. There I was, curled under my blanket, hair tangled, completely unaware of the lens capturing me. The timestamp read 3:14 a.m. last night. He'd been outside my window while I slept. I called the cops, but they shrugged. Can't trace the email, they said. Change your curtains. I didn't sleep. I sat by the window, knife in hand, staring at the streetlights glow. Around 2 a.m., my laptop pinged again. Another email. You look peaceful when you're scared. Attached was a video. Me right now, sitting in the dark. He was watching. Lev. I ripped the curtains down, unplugged the router, and threw my laptop into the bathtub. But the emails kept coming. Running won't help. I like your new haircut. Sent from a library computer 3 states away. The cops set up a sting. I had to act normal, bait him into showing up. For a week I pretended to live my life. Grocery runs, late night coding, walks with pepper spray clutched in my fist. Every shadow felt like him. Every car idling too long made my skin crawl. Then one rainy night, the cameras caught motion. A figure in a hoodie, lingering by my fence. The cops swarmed, guns drawn, but it was just some kid, high and lost, looking for his friend's house. I snapped. The next email came at dawn. Cops are boring. Let's play. I replied, hands steady for the first time in weeks. Meet me tonight, backyard, alone. I didn't tell the police, didn't tell anyone. I set up tripwires, fishing lines strung with tin cans, around the yard and hid in the tool shed, knife and flashlight in hand. The moon hung low, clouds swallowing its light. He came at midnight. Same hoodie, same slow swagger. He paused at the tripwire, smirking, and stepped over it. He knew. Come out, sweetheart, he called, voice sing-song. I'm dying to see you. I waited until he passed the shed. Then I swung the door open, flashlight blazing in his eyes. He staggered back, cursing, and I lunged, slashing at his chest. The knife grazed his ribs. He grabbed my wrist, twisting until I dropped it, and slammed me against the shed wall. Should have stayed hidden, he hissed, breath hot on my face. Then sirens, red and blue lights flooded the yard. The cops crashed through the gate, tackling him to the dirt. I'd rigged a silent alarm on the tripwire. He fought, spitting and snarling as they cuffed him. I'll find you, he screamed, veins bulging. You're mine. They found his van parked 3 blocks away, full of photos, my stolen mail, and a map of my routines. He'd been planning this for months. I moved, changed my name, ditched social media. But fear doesn't fade, it mutates. Last week a package arrived at my new address. No return label. Inside was a dusty teddy bear I'd lost as a kid. A note pinned to its chest. Miss you. The cops say he's still in jail, but the bear's here, sitting on my shelf, watching. Living alone in my Texas house felt safe until the night the power went out. I'd always loved the quiet, but that Tuesday evening, the silence turned suffocating. The sun had just set, leaving the backyard pitch black except for the faint glow of a streetlight far down the road. I was used to the dark. I'd even joked about saving money on electricity, but when the light suddenly flickered and died, my stomach dropped. I groaned, grabbing my phone for a flashlight. The breaker box was in the garage, but as I stood up, a flicker of movement caught my eye. A beam of light, not mine, swept across the backyard. My heart lurched. I froze, staring out the window. The light moved slowly, methodically, like someone scanning the yard. No one should be out there. The tall wooden fence kept animals out, and my neighbors knew better than to trespass. I crouched by the window, peeking through the blinds. The beam stopped near my back door, illuminating a figure in a dark hoodie. He held a flashlight in one hand and something metallic in the other. When the light hit it, my blood turned cold. A crowbar. This wasn't a lost neighbor. I ducked, crawling to the coffee table where my phone lay. My hands shook so badly I could barely dial 911. Someone's in my backyard, I whispered to the dispatcher. He has a crowbar. Please hurry. She told me to hide and stay quiet. I bolted to the bathroom, the only windowless room, and locked the door. The silence was deafening, then crunch, gravel under boots. He was close, too close. A loud crack echoed through the house, glass shattering. He'd broken a window. My breath hitched. I could hear him moving inside now, footsteps heavy and deliberate. The floor creaked as he wandered the living room, opening drawers, knocking over lamps. Every sound carved deeper into my panic. The dispatcher's voice buzzed in my ear. Police are 5 minutes away. 5 minutes might as well have been 5 hours. The footsteps grew louder, closer. He was in the hallway now, testing doorknobs. My bathroom door rattled. "Open up," a man's voice growled, low and slurred. "I just want to talk." I stifled a sob, pressing myself against the wall. The crowbar slammed into the door, splintering the wood. One more hit and he'd be inside. Then sirens, distant but getting louder. The man cursed, footsteps retreating. A door slammed. The police arrived minutes later, finding the back window shattered and muddy footprints leading to the fence. They never caught him, but the fear stayed. I installed motion lights, upgraded my locks, and bought a guard dog. For weeks I jumped at every noise. Then on a stormy night the power went out again, and so did my phone. The second blackout felt like a sick joke. I'd spent weeks reinforcing the house. Steel locks, motion-activated floodlights, even adopting a scrappy rescue dog named Rex who barked at falling leaves. But when the lights died again, so did my phone. No flashlight, no 911, just me, Rex's low growls, and the suffocating dark. I fumbled through the kitchen drawer for matches, my hands shaking. Rex's growls turned frantic. Outside, the motion lights flickered on, bathing the backyard in harsh white light. A figure stood at the fence. Same hoodie, same crowbar. He smirked, staring directly at the camera I'd mounted by the porch. He wanted me to see him. Rex lunged at the back door, barking wildly. "Quiet, boy," I hissed, pulling him back. The man swung the crowbar at the fence latch, snapping it open. Rex's barks turned to high-pitched whines as he backed away, tail tucked. He's scared. He's never scared. I grabbed a fire poker from the hearth and ran to the bedroom, locking the door. The front windows shattered, one then another, as the crowbar smashed through the glass. Wind howled through the house, carrying his ragged breathing. "I know you're home," he called, voice sing-song. "Missed me?" Rex whimpered under the bed. I crouched beside him, clutching the poker. Footsteps creaked down the hallway. Too slow, too calm. He knew I was trapped. The doorknob rattled. "Someone, sweetheart," he said, tapping the crowbar against the door. "Don't make me mess up this pretty wood." I stayed silent, tears blurring my vision. The crowbar slammed into the door, splintering the frame. One more hit, and he'd be inside. He lunged for the closet, Rex at my heels, and shoved aside shoeboxes to reach the attic hatch. The ladder creaked as I climbed, Yip scrambling up behind me. Below, the bedroom door exploded inward. "Found you," he laughed, spotting the open hatch. I pulled the ladder up, sealing the attic, but the hatch trembled as he jumped, grabbing the edge. His fingers curled over the lip, knuckles white. Rex snarled, biting down on his hand. The man howled, letting go, and crashed to the floor. "I'll skin that mutt," he screamed. The attic was a tomb, hot, dusty, filled with broken furniture. No escape. My only weapon was a rusty nail pulled from a floorboard. Rex pressed against me, trembling. Below, the man dragged something heavy across the bedroom. A chair, a ladder. Thud. Something hit the hatch. Again. The wood cracked, splinters raining down. A sliver of light pierced through as the crowbar's tip wedged into the gap. I stabbed at it with the nail, screaming, "Leave us alone." He laughed. "You're fun." The hatch burst open. His face loomed in the opening, sweaty and unshaven, eyes glittering with rage. Rex leaped, sinking his teeth into the man's arm. They tumbled backward, crashing to the floor. I heard the crowbar clatter, Rex's snarls, the man's curses. "No." I scrambled down, nail raised but froze at the seam. Rex lay whimpering, a gash on his side. The man staggered to his feet, clutching a bleeding arm. "This ain't over," he spat, limping toward the broken window. I didn't chase him. I cradled Rex, sobbing until sunrise. The cops found crowbar marks on the attic hatch and a bloody handprint on the fence. "Same guy," an officer said. "He'll be back." I knew. So did Rex. That night he refused to eat, curling tighter under the bed. I dragged the mattress into the living room, staring at the shattered windows, and waited. 3 nights later, the motion lights flicked on again. This time the man didn't smile. He held a gas can in one hand, a lighter in the other. The man grinned through the shattered window, flicking the lighter. The flame danced in his eyes, reflecting pure madness. Rex whined, pressing against my legs, still favoring his injured side. The gas can sloshed as the man doused the porch. The smell of fuel choked the air. I grabbed Rex's collar and bolted to the kitchen, snatching a cast iron skillet and a bottle of cooking oil. My mind raced. Fire needs oxygen. I hurled the skillet through the remaining kitchen window, glass exploding outward. "Hey," I screamed, "over here." He turned, snarling, and lumbered toward the noise. I ducked behind the counter, oil bottle in hand. Rex limped to the pantry, hiding behind the door. The man's shadow fell across the broken window. "Done playing," he hissed, climbing inside. I waited until his feet hit the floor. Then I lunged, pouring the oil in a slick arc between us. He slipped, crashing into the fridge. The lighter flew from his hand, skidding across the floor. I dove for it, but he grabbed my ankle, yanking me back. "Think you're clever," he spat, pinning me down. His breath reeked of gasoline and rot. Rex launched himself at the man's back, teeth sinking into his shoulder. The man howled, releasing me to swat at Rex. I scrambled for the lighter, flicked it, and tossed it into the oil. Flames erupted, cutting him off from the exit. He stumbled back, batting at his sleeves as the fire spread. "You crazy bitch." I grabbed Rex and ran through the shattered kitchen window, glass tearing at my arms. The man followed, clothes smoldering, crowbar raised. We circled the burning house, the heat blistering my skin. Sirens wailed in the distance. He swung the crowbar. I ducked, but it clipped my shoulder, pain radiating down my arm. Rex snapped at his legs, hurting him toward the flaming porch. The man tripped over the gas can, still spewing fuel. Fire licked up his pants. He screamed, beating at the flames, and collapsed into the inferno. The cops found him charred but alive, curled in the ashes of my porch. Rex and I huddled in a neighbor's yard, watching my house burn. "Arsonist," an officer muttered. "Wanted in 3 states. I moved to a high-rise downtown. No yards, no fences, no gas lines." Rex healed, but he barked at every flicker of light. I quit my job, started therapy, and changed my name. A year later, a letter arrived. No return address. Inside was a photo of my old house, reduced to rubble. On the back, scrawled in ash, "You're still my favorite. The cops say he died in prison. Smoke inhalation, they claim. But some nights, when the power flickers, I swear I smell gasoline." Rex growls at the door, fur raised, and I clutch his collar, whispering, "Not again, not again." Safety's a myth. All that's left is the burn scars on my arms and the flicker of a lighter in my dreams.